The first thing Caleb Reed taught me was not how to drive. It was how to breathe when the past was sitting in the passenger seat. My hands were locked around the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had turned the color of chalk. Rain hammered against the windshield in silver lines, blurring the empty parking lot beyond the headlights until every painted stripe looked like it was melting into the dark. The engine purred beneath me, soft and steady, but my heartbeat was louder. It filled my ears, my chest, my throat. I could smell wet asphalt, old leather, and the clean, cold scent of cedarwood coming from the Alpha beside me. Caleb Reed did not move. That was the strangest part. Any other Alpha would have taken the keys, told me to calm down, laughed it off, or called my brother to say I was not ready. Caleb just sat there with one hand resting loosely on his knee, his broad shoulders relaxed beneath his black jacket, his voice low enough to blend with the rain. "Ethan, look at me, not the road." I swallowed, but my throat felt too tight. "I can't." "Yes, you can," he said, not as an order, not as a challenge, but like he already knew the truth and was simply waiting for me to catch up. I forced my eyes away from the windshield. Caleb's face was half lit by the dashboard, all sharp lines softened by blue light and rain shadows. His dark blonde hair was still damp from running through the storm, and a tiny drop of water clung to his jaw before slipping down to his collar. He looked nothing like the boy I remembered from my brother Noah's college photos, the lanky troublemaker always leaning against some beat-up car with a crooked grin. This Caleb was quieter, heavier, like life had taken something from him and left silence in its place. "Good," he murmured. "Now inhale for 4 seconds." I tried. The breath shook on the way in. My omega scent, usually hidden under blockers and habit, fluttered out of me anyway, faint vanilla and summer rain, nervous and exposed. Caleb noticed. Of course he noticed. Alphas always did. But he did not lean closer. He did not comment. He simply turned the heat up one notch and looked out at the empty lot as if giving me privacy. Inside my own panic. "Hold it," he said. "Now let it go." I exhaled, slow and uneven. The car did not move. The world did not end. Still, the steering wheel felt like a memory under my palms, and the headlights felt too bright, like they were reaching into a night I had spent years trying not to remember. I was 21 years old enough to vote, old enough to pay rent, old enough to pretend I was fine, but one turn of a key had turned me back into the child in the back seat, listening to rain, tires, and my mother's voice telling me everything would be okay. Caleb's voice brought me back. "We are not driving yet." I blinked at him. "Then what are we doing?" His eyes met mine, gray-green and calm as winter glass. "Tonight, we're proving the car can be on without taking anything from you." Something in my chest cracked, not loudly, not completely, just enough to let air in. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, Caleb Reed sat beside me like a wall between me and the past, and for the first time in years, I wondered if a road could be something other than the place where my life had stopped. Before Caleb Reed sat beside me in that rain-soaked parking lot, my world had been painfully small, and everyone in it seemed to think that was safer. I lived with my older brother Noah in a 2-bedroom apartment on the west side of town, 3 floors above a laundromat that smelled like detergent, warm metal, and somebody else's Sunday dinner. Noah called it temporary, even though we had been there for 4 years. He was an alpha with a steady job, a reliable truck, and the kind of protective instincts that made people step aside before he even opened his mouth. To most people, he was responsible. To me, he was the locked front door, the extra text messages, the ride home I did not ask for, the careful reminder to call him when my shift ended. I knew he loved me. That was what made it complicated. Love could still become a fence if someone was scared enough. My days followed the same quiet map. Morning classes at the community college, lunch from a vending machine, 2 hours in the library pretending to study while watching other students. Make plans that did not include me, then an evening shift at the little bookstore on Maple Avenue. The store was narrow and old, with creaking floors, dusty windows, and shelves so crowded they leaned like tired shoulders. I liked it there because books did not ask why my hands shook when traffic got too loud outside. Mrs. Whitaker, the owner, let me hide behind the counter during storms and never said a word when I turned the radio down during weather reports. At 8:30 every night, I locked the front door, counted the register, and waited beneath the green awning for the number 17 bus. That bus was my entire independence, a 20-minute ride through wet streets and stoplights, past coffee shops, gas stations, apartment blocks, and families in cars heading somewhere together. I told people I did not drive because parking was expensive, because insurance was ridiculous, because the city had good public transit. All of that was easier than saying the truth. The truth was a rainy road in October, the squeal of tires, the smell of my mother's vanilla hand lotion, and her voice telling me not to be scared just seconds before my childhood split into before and after. Since then, cars had felt like closed rooms with wheels, machines that could carry you forward or steal everything before you were ready to let go. Noah remembered that night too, but he carried it differently. He became careful. I became still. He learned how to check locks, scan crosswalks, and keep emergency cash in 3 different places. I learned how to smile when people said I was sweet, quiet, easy to take care of. I became the kind of Omega nobody worried about because I never asked for anything dangerous. No parties, no late drives, no dates with alphas Noah did not personally approve, no dreams that required a highway. Then came the internship letter from a design studio 12 miles outside town, in a place the bus did not reach. I read it 3 times in the bookstore office, my fingers trembling over the words, and for one bright second I saw a version of myself with a real portfolio, a real future, a life that was not measured in bus schedules. Then I saw the address, and the old fear folded itself around my ribs. When Noah found me at the kitchen table that night, the letter between us and my dinner untouched, he understood too quickly. He offered to drive me every day. He said it like a solution. I heard it like a door closing. That was when he mentioned Caleb, his oldest friend, the only person he trusted with a car, a secret, and me. I said no before he finished the sentence. Noah only sighed and said, "Ethan, you cannot spend the rest of your life waiting for someone else to take you where you need to go." I hated him for saying it because he was right. I hated myself more because even then, before the rain, before the parking lot, before Caleb told me to breathe, some hidden part of me was already reaching for the road. The first time Caleb came for me, it was because the sky opened over Maple Avenue like it had been waiting for the exact moment I locked the bookstore door. Rain poured off the green awning in heavy silver ropes, splashing over the curb and turning the streetlights into blurry halos. I stood with my backpack hugged to my chest, watching cars hiss past through puddles, each set of headlights making my stomach tighten before vanishing into the dark. My phone buzzed in my hand. Noah had already sent 6 messages in 10 minutes, each one more worried than the last. I was about to type that I could wait for the bus when his 7th message arrived. "Caleb is coming. Stay under the awning. Do not argue." I stared at the screen until the words became meaningless. Caleb Reed was not a stranger, not exactly, but he belonged to the background of my life, not the center of it. He was the friend Noah mentioned in old college stories, the alpha who helped him move furniture, the quiet man who came by once every few months with engine oil on his hands and shadows under his eyes. I remembered him from holiday dinners, always leaning against the kitchen counter instead of sitting, always listening more than speaking. He had never treated me like a child, which somehow made me more nervous around him than anyone else. A black car pulled up to the curb 5 minutes later, sleek and low, its tires whispering against the wet pavement. The passenger window lowered, and warm light spilled from inside. Caleb looked out at me from behind the wheel, his dark blonde hair damp at the edges, his gray-green eyes calm beneath the glow of the dashboard. "Ethan," he said, like my name was not an inconvenience at all. "Get in before you float away." I almost smiled, but my nerves caught it before it reached my mouth. I hurried around the car, careful not to slip, and climbed into the passenger seat. The interior smelled like clean leather, peppermint gum, and Caleb himself, cedarwood under rain, steady and cool. My Omega instincts responded before I could stop them, loosening a knot in my chest I had not known was there. I clicked the seat belt into place and pressed myself close to the door, leaving as much space between us as the car allowed. Caleb noticed. His eyes flicked briefly to the gap, then back to the road. He did not tease me. He did not ask why I looked ready to jump out at the next red light. He simply turned the heater higher and angled the vents away from my face so the warm air would reach my hands first. "Noah said your bus was delayed," he said. "It usually is when it rains." My voice sounded too small. "You did not have to come." "I know." He pulled away from the curb slowly, so smoothly that I barely felt the car move. I came anyway. Those 3 words settled into the quiet, like something heavier than kindness. I looked out the window, watching the bookstore shrink behind us, its yellow sign fading through the rain. Caleb drove differently from Noah. Noah gripped the wheel like the world might betray him at any second. Caleb held it with one relaxed hand, patient at every stop, careful over every puddle, never rushing even when another driver honked behind us. The city felt less sharp from inside his car, less like a place full of danger and more like a place that could be crossed one light at a time. Halfway home, thunder rolled low over the rooftops, and I flinched before I could hide it. Caleb did not miss that either. Too loud, he asked. I shook my head too quickly. I am fine. He lowered the radio, though it had barely been audible. You do not have to be fine in my car. My fingers tightened around the strap of my backpack. No one had ever said something like that to me. Not so simply, not as if being afraid was not a failure. I wanted to answer, but the words would not come. For the rest of the drive, we sat in a silence that did not demand anything from me. When he parked in front of my building, Noah was already waiting near the entrance, arms crossed, worry written all over his face. Caleb turned off the engine but did not immediately unlock the doors. For one quiet second, before my brother became the center of the world again, Caleb looked at me. You did well, he said. I blinked. I just sat here. Sometimes that is the hard part. Then the locks clicked open, and the cold rain rushed back in. I stepped out of his car feeling like nothing had happened, and everything had. Noah did not ask me how the ride felt until after Caleb left, which was exactly like Noah, careful enough to wait and protective enough to watch my face the entire time. He stood by the apartment window with one hand on the curtain, looking down at the street where Caleb's taillights disappeared through the rain. The laundromat downstairs hummed beneath our floor, and the whole apartment smelled like tomato soup, wet shoes, and the lavender candle Noah lit whenever storms rolled in. He drove slow, Noah said, trying to make it sound casual. I set my backpack on a chair and kept my eyes on the internship letter still lying on the kitchen table. He drove normally. For Caleb, that is slow. There was something in his voice I could not read, a piece of history folded so tightly I could not see the shape of it. I wanted to ask what he meant, but Noah turned from the window before I found the courage. His expression softened when he looked at me, and that softness hurt more than anger would have. Ethan, about the internship. My shoulders tightened. I know. It is too far. That is not what I was going to say. He crossed the room and tapped the paper with 2 fingers. You earned this. Mrs. Whitaker told me you stayed up half the night fixing your portfolio. Your professor wrote that. Recommendation. You did the work. I stared at the studio address printed at the top. 12 miles. 40 minutes by car. No bus line. No easy excuse. You said you could drive me. I can, Noah said. But I should not be your only way out of this apartment. The words landed quietly, but they landed deep. I hated the way my eyes burned. You are the one who always tells me to text when I leave class. Because I am scared. His answer came too fast, too honest. He looked away, jaw tight, then lowered his voice. But me being scared does not mean you have to stay small. For a long moment, rain filled the silence between us. Then Noah took out his phone. Caleb can teach you. My stomach turned over. No. He is the safest driver I know. I said no. Ethan. Why him? My voice cracked in the middle, and I hated that too. Noah studied me then. Really studied me. As if he had heard something I had not meant to say. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed in his palm. Caleb's name lit the screen. Noah put it on speaker without asking, the way brothers did when they forgot privacy existed. You home? Caleb asked. His voice was lower through the phone, roughened by static and rain, but it still filled the kitchen with that strange calm. Yes, Noah said. Thanks for getting him. He was fine. I looked down, heat rising to my face for reasons I did not understand. Noah leaned against the counter. I need a favor. There was a pause. If this is about your truck, I told you to stop ignoring the brake light. It is about Ethan. The silence that followed was small, but charged. I heard the faint sound of a turn signal through Caleb's speaker, steady and patient. What about him? Noah looked at me as he said it. He needs to learn how to drive. I shook my head once, sharply, but Noah did not look away. The internship starts in 3 weeks. I can help, but I think you would be better. Caleb did not answer right away. I imagined him alone in his black car, rain sliding over the windshield, one hand resting on the wheel, his face unreadable in dashboard light. "Noah," he said finally, "careful now. Are you sure? That is a good idea?" Something in my chest tightened at the hesitation. It should have relieved me. Instead, it felt like a door closing before I had reached it. Noah's eyes narrowed. Because of the car, or because he is my brother? Another pause, longer this time. Both. The honesty made the room feel smaller. Noah exhaled through his nose, then gave a humorless little laugh. "Then remember both. Teach him to drive. And remember he is my brother." My face went hot. I am standing right here. Caleb heard me. I knew because his voice changed, softening in a way that made the rain outside seem farther away. "Ethan, nobody is making you do this." I should have said no again. I had 1,000 reasons. Fear, memory, pride, the strange pull in my chest whenever he said my name. Instead, I looked at the internship letter, at the life 12 miles away, at Noah trying to loosen a fence he had built with shaking hands. "One lesson," I said. Caleb was quiet for one heartbeat. Then he answered, "One lesson. Empty parking lot. No pressure. You can stop anytime." Noah nodded like the matter was settled, but I heard the warning beneath Caleb's calm and the promise beneath it too. That night, long after Noah went to bed, I stood by the window and watched rain bead on the glass, wondering why the thought of sitting beside Caleb again scared me less than the thought of never trying. Caleb arrived the next evening at 6, exactly when the rain had stopped and the streets still shone like black glass under the setting sun. I heard his car before I saw it, a low, smooth sound pulling up beneath our apartment window, and my stomach tightened so quickly I nearly dropped the glass I was drying. Noah noticed because Noah noticed everything. He stood at the sink beside me, sleeves rolled to his elbows, watching my reflection in the dark kitchen window instead of looking outside. "You do not have to do this tonight," he said. "I know." My voice came out too careful. "You said that yesterday." Yesterday, I was being brave for 5 seconds. Noah gave a small smile, but it faded when Caleb knocked. The sound was not loud, only 2 steady taps, but the apartment changed around it. The air seemed to hold its breath. Noah opened the door, and Caleb stood in the hallway with his hands in the pockets of his dark jacket, his hair still damp from an earlier shower, his scent clean and cool beneath the faint trace of engine oil. Cedarwood, peppermint, and something like cold air before snow. He looked at Noah first, then at me, and the shift in his expression was so small anyone else would have missed it. Noah did not. "Come in," my brother said, stepping aside. Caleb entered, careful not to take up too much space, though he was the kind of alpha who made every room aware of him. "Evening," he said. "Evening," I answered, and then immediately hated how soft my voice sounded. Noah grabbed his keys from the counter and turned them over in his palm, metal clicking against metal. "Ground rules." Caleb looked almost amused. I expected nothing less. Empty parking lot only. No main roads. No highways. No pushing him if he says stop. Already planned that. No showing off. I am 25, not 17. Noah raised an eyebrow. "I knew you at 17. Caleb accepted that with a silent nod. The corner of his mouth barely moved, and for one strange second I could see the old friendship between them, the history I had only heard about in fragments. Then Noah's face grew serious in a way that made my chest tighten. And one more thing. Caleb's expression cooled, not unfriendly, just guarded. "Say it." Noah looked from Caleb to me and back again. "He is my brother." The words were simple, but they landed with the weight of a locked gate. My face warmed so fast I had to look down at my shoes. "Noah, please do not do this. I am doing it once, and then I am done." He did not sound done. He sounded terrified. Caleb did not defend himself, which somehow made the moment worse. He only nodded slowly. "I know who he is." Noah stepped closer, lowering his voice, but not enough for me to miss it. "Then remember it when he gets scared. Remember it when he trusts you. Remember it if he looks at you like you are the only safe thing in the room." My breath caught. Caleb's eyes flicked toward me, and the silence that followed was sharper than anything spoken. For a heartbeat, I felt exposed, as if Noah had reached into my chest and named something that had barely begun to exist. Caleb looked away first. "I will get him home safe. That is not all I am asking." "I know," Caleb said again, quieter this time. I wanted to disappear and be seen at the same time, which was a confusing, impossible feeling. I wanted Noah to stop protecting me like I was made of glass. And I wanted Caleb to say something that proved he did not see me that way either. Instead, he turned to me with the same calm patience he had used in the car. Ready? I picked up my jacket from the chair. My hands were trembling, but not only from fear. As I followed Caleb into the hallway, Noah touched my shoulder. Text me if you want to come home. I nodded. Caleb waited by the elevator, giving us space, but his presence reached me anyway, steady as a handrail in the dark. When the doors closed between Noah and us, the tiny mirrored elevator filled with quiet. Caleb stood on the opposite side, keeping his distance like a promise he intended to keep. I stared at the numbers counting down. I am sorry, I whispered. For Noah. Caleb shook his head. He loves you. He treats me like I might break. Caleb looked at me then, his gray-green eyes calm and unreadable. Maybe he is scared because he knows you will not. The elevator doors opened before I could answer, and the cool evening air rushed in from the lobby. Outside, his black car waited at the curb, headlights glowing softly against the wet street. For the first time, it did not look like a threat. It looked like a question. The parking lot behind the closed movie theater was wide, empty, and washed clean by the last of the rain. Puddles reflected the pink-orange sky in broken pieces, and the tall light poles buzzed softly overhead, turning on one by one as evening folded over the city. Caleb parked near the far end, away from the main road, away from traffic, away from anything that could move faster than my courage. For a moment, neither of us got out. The heater hummed low. My backpack rested between my feet. My reflection stared back at me from the passenger window, pale, wide-eyed, and trying too hard to look ready. Caleb turned off the engine and leaned back, his hands open on his knees. We can sit here for 10 minutes, he said. We can sit here for an hour. Or we can go home. I looked at the empty driver's seat. It should have been simple. A seat, a wheel, a few pedals. Millions of people did this every day without feeling like their chest was full of glass. What if I freeze? I asked. Then we stop. What if I panic? Then we breathe. What if I cannot do it? Caleb looked at me then, steady and quiet. Then you still showed up. I did not know why that almost made me cry. Maybe because showing up had never counted before. People praised finish lines, licenses, jobs, brave smiles, neat recoveries. Nobody praised the trembling moment before the first step. Caleb opened his door and stepped out into the cool air. I followed more slowly, my sneakers splashing in a shallow puddle. He walked around to the passenger side and waited while I stood beside the driver's door like it belonged to someone else. Your choice, he said. Not Noah's choice. Not the internship's choice. Mine. I opened the door. The driver's seat felt different from the passenger seat, even though it was only a few feet away. Lower somehow. Closer to every dangerous part of the machine. I slid in, and the smell of leather and rain surrounded me. Caleb moved to the passenger side, but did not get in right away. Seat first, he said through the open door. There is a lever under the left side. I reached down and fumbled for it. The seat jerked forward too fast, and I made a small startled sound. Caleb did not laugh. He simply crouched outside the car, keeping his body visible, but not crowding me. Try again. Small movements. I adjusted the seat until my feet reached the pedals without stretching. Then came the mirrors. The rearview mirror was easy until I saw the empty lot behind me and imagined headlights where there were none. My hand froze. Caleb noticed instantly. May I? He asked. Not just moving. Not just helping. Asking. I nodded. He leaned in carefully through the open door, one hand braced on the roof, the other reaching for the mirror. He was close enough that his jacket brushed my sleeve, close enough for his scent to settle around me, cedarwood, peppermint, and cold air, but he moved with such careful restraint that the space between us felt protected instead of invaded. My omega scent stirred nervously, vanilla and rain slipping free despite my effort to hold it in. Caleb's hand paused for half a second on the mirror. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and then he finished adjusting it and stepped back. That small retreat said more than any compliment could have. He had noticed me, and he had chosen respect. When he finally sat in the passenger seat, the car felt smaller, warmer, too full of things neither of us was saying. Hands at 9 and 3, he instructed. I placed them on the wheel. Good. Do not squeeze it like it owes you money. A laugh escaped me before fear could stop it. It was tiny, but real. Caleb glanced at me, and something soft moved through his eyes. "There you are," he said. My heart stumbled. I looked away quickly, pretending to study the dashboard. He walked me through everything: the brake, the gas, the gear shift, the turn signal, the headlights. He never rushed. He never raised his voice. When I pressed the brake too hard, he only said, "That pedal is sensitive. Treat it like a sleeping cat." I laughed again, and the sound surprised both of us. Then came the key. My fingers wrapped around it, and the past rose fast. Rain, tires, my mother's hand reaching back toward mine. My breath snagged. Caleb's voice cut through gently. "Ethan, look at me." I did. "You are here," he said. "This is a parking lot. The car is parked. I am beside you. Nothing has happened yet." I nodded once, then turned the key. The engine came alive beneath my hands. Not roaring, not threatening, just waiting. My eyes burned, but I stayed in the seat. Caleb did not smile like we had won. He simply nodded, as if he had always known I could reach this moment. "That is enough for today if you want it to be." I stared through the windshield at the empty lane ahead, painted gold by the dying sun. My hands were still shaking. My heart was still afraid. But beneath the fear, something else had opened. Small and bright. "No," I whispered. "Teach me how to move." The car moved less than 5 miles per hour, yet it felt as if I had pushed us off the edge of the world. My right foot hovered over the gas pedal with so much caution that the car barely rolled forward, creeping across the empty parking lot while the last light of sunset spread over the windshield. Caleb sat beside me with his seat belt fastened, one hand resting near the center console, but not touching anything, his posture calm enough to steady the whole car. "Good," he said. "Just let it coast. You do not have to prove anything." I kept my eyes fixed on the faded white line ahead. "I am moving." "You are." Two small words, but they sounded like praise. My chest warmed despite the fear. The steering wheel trembled under my hands, not because of the car, but because of me. I guided us past the first row of parking spaces, then the second. The empty theater rose on our left, all dark glass, and old movie posters sun-bleached behind locked doors. A flock of birds lifted from the roof and crossed the pink sky, and for one fragile moment, the world felt ordinary. A car could be just a car. A road could be just a road. I could be 21 years old, learning late, embarrassed, but alive. "Ease off the gas," Caleb said gently. "Now brake." I pressed too hard. The car jerked, and my body snapped forward against the seat belt. It was not dangerous. It was barely anything. But the motion tore open a door in my mind before I could stop it. Rain on glass. My mother humming under her breath. A sudden shout from somewhere outside the memory. The smell of vanilla lotion and hot rubber. My hands flew off the wheel. The car was already stopped, but my body did not understand that. My breath came too fast, sharp and useless. The parking lot blurred. Caleb shifted beside me, but he did not grab me, did not crowd me, did not make my fear smaller by trying to overpower it. "Ethan," he said, low and clear. "The car is stopped. Your foot is on the brake. We are safe." I shook my head. "I cannot. You are already doing it." "No." My voice broke, and I hated how young I sounded. "You do not understand. If I learn this, if I get used to it, if I can sit here and drive like nothing happened, then what does that mean?" Caleb went very still. The engine hummed. Somewhere beyond the lot, traffic moved along the main road, soft and distant, like another life. I pressed one shaking hand to my mouth and forced the words out before I lost them. "It feels like leaving her behind." The sentence landed between us, heavier than the storm from the night before. For years, I had thought I was afraid of cars, of roads, of tires sliding on wet pavement. But sitting there with the brake under my foot and Caleb's quiet presence beside me, I understood the truth. I was not only afraid of what had happened. I was afraid that healing from it would make my grief look less loyal. Caleb did not answer right away. He turned his face toward the windshield, and the fading sky washed his profile in gold. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful, almost rough. "My best friend used to race with me." I looked at him through the blur in my eyes. "What?" His name was Mason. We were 17, stupid, proud, and convinced that being good at something meant nothing could ever go wrong. Caleb's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed steady. One night, after a local track event, he made a choice that changed his life. I was not the one driving his car, but I was there. I saw the fear afterward. I heard the silence in the hospital room when everyone ran out of things to say. Mason recovered, but not the same way he had been before. Neither did I. The alpha beside me suddenly looked less untouchable, less like a wall, and more like a person who had been holding himself together with quiet hands. "That is why you stopped racing," I whispered. He nodded once. "I told people I grew up." That sounded cleaner than saying I was scared to love the thing that hurt someone I cared about. My fingers curled slowly back around the wheel. Caleb looked at them, then at me. "Moving forward does not erase anyone, Ethan. Sometimes it is the only way to carry them with you without letting the memory become a cage." My throat tightened. Again, but this time I could breathe through it. The parking lot was still there. Caleb was still there. The car waited patiently beneath my hands. After a long moment, I wiped my cheek with my sleeve and looked ahead. "Can we try one more time?" Caleb's eyes softened, but he did not make it too big. He only nodded toward the open lane. "Whenever you are ready." The second try was not beautiful. The car rolled forward, stopped too sharply, rolled again, drifted a little too close to a painted line, and made a wide, awkward turn that would have failed any real driving test in America. But Caleb did not treat it like failure. He treated every inch as proof. "That is better," he said when I eased off the brake without jerking us forward. "Now look where you want to go, not where you are afraid you will end up." I almost laughed because it sounded too much like life advice pretending to be a driving lesson, but I followed his instruction. I looked toward the far end of the parking lot, where the last strip of sunset had turned the wet pavement copper. The car followed, slow and uncertain, but it followed. For the first time, I understood that the wheel did not need to be fought. It needed to be guided. My hands loosened. My shoulders dropped. Caleb noticed, of course. "There," he murmured. "Feel that?" I nodded, afraid speaking would break whatever fragile thing had settled inside me. We made one full loop around the theater. One slow, uneven, trembling loop. To anyone else, it would have looked like nothing. To me, it felt like crossing a state line. When I stopped near the place where we had started, I kept both hands on the wheel and stared ahead while my eyes filled. I was embarrassed by the tears, but Caleb did not make them embarrassing. He only reached into the cup holder, pulled out a clean napkin from a coffee shop, and held it between two fingers, waiting until I chose to take it. "I am sorry," I whispered, wiping my face, "for crying over a parking lot. People cry over smaller things than freedom." My breath caught at the word. Freedom. It sounded too big for the inside of Caleb's car, too bright for the darkening lot, too dangerous for someone like me. I turned toward him. "Is that what this is?" Caleb looked through the windshield for a long moment. The theater sign flickered above us, missing two letters, glowing red against the evening. "It can be," he said, "if you let it." His voice had changed again, dropping into that careful place where truth lived but did not like being seen. I remembered what he had told me about Mason, about racing, about the way he had packed his fear away and called it growing up. "Why did you say yes?" I asked. "To Noah." Caleb gave a quiet breath that was not quite a laugh. "Because Noah asked." That is not the whole answer. His eyes moved to me then, and the car seemed to shrink around us, not in a frightening way, but in the way a secret makes a room smaller. "No," he said, "it is not." My pulse quickened. Outside, a few drops of rain slid from the edge of the roof and tapped softly on the hood. Caleb looked down at his hands. They were strong hands, mechanic's hands, with clean nails, faint scars from tools, and a stillness that felt learned rather than natural. After Mason, I stopped teaching anyone anything that mattered. I fixed engines. I changed brake pads. I kept cars running, but I did not get in the passenger seat and trust someone else with the wheel. He swallowed, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked uncertain. "Then Noah called about you." I told myself I was doing him a favor. I told myself you needed someone patient. But the truth is, when I drove you home in the rain and you looked at the road like it had taken your whole life hostage, I understood that feeling too well to ignore it. My chest tightened, not with fear this time, but with something warmer and more frightening. "So, I am your therapy project?" Caleb's head turned sharply. "No." The answer came with such immediate force that my omega scent fluttered in the air, startled and soft. Caleb caught himself, then gentled his voice. "No, Ethan, you are not a project. You are a person who deserves someone to sit beside him without taking over." I looked down at the wheel, my fingers resting lightly against the worn leather. Noah thinks I might look at you. Like you are the only safe thing in the room. Caleb went completely still. I should not have said it. The words were too honest, too close to the line Noah had drawn in the apartment. But once they were out, I could not pull them back. Caleb stared ahead, jaw tight, eyes reflecting the dashboard glow. Noah knows me too well, he said softly. My heart stumbled. What does that mean? He turned to me, and there was no flirtation in his expression, no alpha arrogance, no careless hunger for control. Only restraint, fear, and something tender enough to hurt. It means I am trying very hard to be worthy of the trust he gave me, and even harder not to want more than I am allowed to want. The silence after that was not empty. It was alive. I thought of Noah upstairs waiting for my text, of my internship letter on the kitchen table, of my mother's memory resting somewhere behind my ribs, no longer a cage, but not yet a blessing. I thought of Caleb, who had taught me to turn the key, to breathe, to move forward by inches. I picked up my phone and sent Noah a message with shaking hands. I am okay. I drove one loop. His reply came almost instantly. Proud of you. Come home when you are ready. I showed it to Caleb. For the first time that night, he smiled fully, small but real, and it changed his whole face. Ready to go home? He asked. I looked at the empty lot ahead, then at the road beyond it, shining under streetlights. Not yet, I said. Can we do one more loop? We finished the second loop in near silence, but it was no longer the silence Ethan knew from fear, grief, or waiting for Noah's footsteps after late shifts. It was focused, tender, filled with headlights on wet pavement and Caleb's steady voice, teaching his shaking hands that the wheel did not have to be fought. Every mistake became encouragement, a wide turn, a forgotten signal, a breath caught too hard. When Ethan parked beneath the red glow of the old theater sign, pride arrived before panic could. Caleb waited, careful as ever, then said, You drove. Ethan answered, in circles, but they both knew it was more. Hope trembled between them, complicated by Noah, loyalty, and every reason Caleb should step back. Still, Ethan asked him to teach him again tomorrow, and the answer came too quickly to mean only driving. Caleb warned himself with Ethan's name, but Ethan only said, Do not decide for me what I am ready to feel. Caleb nodded with quiet respect. Later, Noah met them in the lobby, worried until Ethan showed him the keys. You drove? Noah asked. 2 loops, Ethan said. Caleb murmured, a little miracle, and tomorrow no longer looked impossible.